Hi, this is Bob Wells here, and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. This is the show where we hear about people's interests and uncover some fascinating stories at the same time. I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. In today's show, I'm delighted to be joined by Francis Dunnery. Hello and welcome to the show, Francis.
Hey, how's it going? What's happening out there?
Well, I mean, I'm in the UK, and it's there's a bit of rain outside. It's getting dark, and you're in the States, aren't you?
I'm in the Pocono Mountains. I'm in like a hippieville. Actually, it's not. Actually, it's Trump land. Actually, out here, it's kind of like they've all got guns and everything. So.
Oh, really? Right. Yeah.
Where are you in England?
Well, I'm in Lincolnshire, in a little town called Stamford, which is just north of Peterborough.
That's all that like area that I don't understand.
Yeah, the east of England. You probably go past it when you've been down on the A1 with a band in a van,
right,
or a limousine. And you'd have sailed through on the A1 and it would have bypassed you. But it's a small Georgian market town, actually voted by the Sunday Times as one of the best places to live.
Is it one of them places where they have like Church of England meetings like every 2 days?
It is. Yeah.
Like hello, how are you?
Right.
Hello. And they do like talk like that.
It is. And they've got a Waitrose and they've got ducks crossing the road and things like that.
So. That's it. I get it. I understand. All right.
Do you have places like that in the US? Probably not.
Not really. It's more like, what happens here? There's more like, like bison crossing the roads and stuff. And sometimes an escaped kangaroo or something like that. But there's not. They don't usually have ducks. Well, actually, that's not true. They do, but the thing about America with the wildlife is even on my bird feeder, because I was always into birds when I was a kid. It was a big thing in England for 7 and 8 year olds. We used to go, cruelly. Collecting birds' eggs and stuff like that. But there was this book called The Observer's Book of Birds.
Oh yeah.
And so all of these different birds that were in that book that we could never see in England, I get to see now in America. They're here. I go, that's one of them birds that was in that book.
So you can actually tick them off now as you spotted them.
Well, things like ospreys and there's all sorts of like eagles and stuff flying around, vultures and all that stuff flying around. It's pretty cool.
Do you enjoy living in the States?
I do. I mean, I really do. I felt I was always a bit uncomfortable in England. I didn't like the class system. I was very wary of it. It kind of, I for some reason, I don't know why, I was very aware of it, that I was a scumbag.
And whereabouts were you in the UK?
The north of England in the Lake District, probably one of the most beautiful parts of England, but
very
just the nature of being a northerner and being the blood, that whole kind of thing was, when you went anywhere, you would always look down upon. There was a weird, or maybe I was just paranoid, I don't know. But, we didn't have a football team like Liverpool to be proud of, or Manchester, or Newcastle even, or Leeds. And a lot of northern towns had football teams that they could kind of attach their psychology to and be like, I'm a Leeds fan.
Yeah.
With us, we had nothing. So we were just like kind of these like weird little forgotten people on the left-hand side of the M6. That with weird accents and we didn't really see ourselves as we were cut off, to be honest.
You didn't feel part of the mainstream.
I didn't. No, I never felt part of England. I always felt more Scottish or Irish than I did English because of because I don't know why. It's a good question. I actually don't know why. My dad was Scottish, so maybe it was because of that.
Yeah. But you settled in the States now, and you're enjoying it there.
Well, it's the systems here are, you can change your rank and file here. It's to do with how hard you work or how, if you can achieve anything here. It's amazing, and everybody wants you to do well. There isn't that kind of, who do you think you are? You're getting above your station type thing. It's like everybody's kind of like, wow, you did that. That's amazing. Yeah. It's a different culture, and it's more suited for my nature, I think.
Yeah, sure. So, How have the last 18 months with COVID been for you?
Oh, great. Absolutely fantastic. I had a rest. I come off the road for a bit. It was it didn't affect me at all, to be honest. I mean, I was due a rest. I'd been on the road for 16 years, literally 150 shows a year.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was, but I got to hang out with my kids more. I got to, I recorded an album because I can't stop doing music.
Yeah.
I did a few online concerts. I made a Patreon, I'm on Patreon now. I adapted.
Yes.
I think a lot of people talk about the survival of the fittest, but I think in reality it's the survival of those that can adapt.
Yes, that's why the dinosaurs never carried on, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. So I think, I'm good at adapting. I can sleep on a park bench, or I can go into a 5 million star hotel, and I can just, I can adapt to the circumstances. So I just adapted, and it was no problem at all.
So it's been a good time creatively, and obviously
one of the best times of my life, actually.
Oh, well, that's great stuff. That's good news. Now, so the album we'll talk about a bit later on is The Big Purple Castle.
Yeah.
Which I've heard a couple of tracks, which is fantastic. So before we talk about your musical career, Francis, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came into the music industry, please?
Well, my grandfather played with the Jimmy Shan band, so there was always music around. There's a piano in our house, and they'd come home, my mum and dad would come home, maybe bring a couple of people home, and I was like 4 or 5, and they'd sing drunken songs on the piano and stuff like that. And then my brother, who was an absolutely brilliant guitar player, he was in the house, with guitar, and he actually played guitar for Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh, right.
He was Ozzy's first guitar player when Ozzy left Sabbath. And so I was around Ozzy. Ozzy was like sleeping on my couch. I had a weird thing like that,
Yeah.
Like, I remember telling my school friends, Ozzy Osbourne's on our couch, and they were like, what are you talking about? What he said. But he really was. And and so my brother was probably the main influence on me in that. And then I started off playing drums at a club 4 nights a week down in a cabaret club. We'd kind of be the opening act for these cabaret bands that would come on. There was me and an organist, Peter, and he would play all these all my love, all my kissing, you don't know what you've been in this, boy. Yeah. And I would play like terrible drums, go do all this stuff. And so it was always there, music. I was a bit of a mischievous kid. I was like always like fighting or breaking into shops or I was just going, jumping into lakes, I was full on. I was like really full on.
Yeah.
And me and all my pals were, it was kind of like the way it was. But music was always in the background there, and that was probably what kept me out of jail, I think.
One of the I obviously It Bites were quite a big band in the 80s. Well, they were a big band in the sort of late 80s, 90s. And there's a definite Genesis type of influence.
Oh, we loved, well, when you first start doing music, it's very difficult not to, you need kind of a template in which to follow. And so in 1971, there was an album in my house called Nursery Crime by Genesis. And so I think I was 11 or something. Maybe even 10 or something. How old was I? Yeah, I was 11 or something like that. And it was a very odd album because I didn't really understand what was the guitar, it was just a weird album. It was like a weird atmosphere. And I remember I used to play it every night. It was I was on a cassette, and I used to play it every single night. I would go to sleep listening to it, and I got these early Genesis songs, and ingrained into my system.
Yes.
And so when you first get into your own band, the natural thing to do before you find your own voice is to, you follow a path that's already been treaded. If people like blues, they'll go down the blues path. If people like Frank Zappa, they'll do that, But It Bites, we had a whole collection of bands from the 70s, that we had, things like Genesis, Yes, the Alex Harvey band, Soft Machine, Mahavishnu Orchestra. There was a lot of
John McLaughlin.
A lot of that stuff in it, even things like bands like Isotope that nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah.
Early Santana. There was all these, Return to Forever. There was all these bands around because my brother was 12 years older than me, so there was always albums around the house of that like progressive fusion stuff. Pato, early bands like Pato or, Warm Dust, like bands like that. I remember them albums in the house. That's Paul Carrick actually in Warm Dust. I didn't know that.
Oh, really? What about bands like Hawkwind and Gong? Did you listen to them at all?
Gong a little bit, not Hawkwind, no. Yeah. I mean, apart from Silver Machine.
Yeah. That's right, when Lemmy was playing with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your guitar style is, you've got so many different styles, and the speed and some of those solos that you do. Amazing. for any guitarist listeners out there, I mean, is that all alternate picking, would you say, on some of those really fluid guitar solos? Or how do you...
Well, I think in general, like if I'm really honest, I think they're more like tricks. Like a lot of the guitar playing, my strength of a guitar player is actually rhythm guitar. That's what I'm really good at.
Yeah.
You know, when you play guitar or listen to something like Alan Holdsworth and you copy his style, because it's a very difficult style to copy, and you can't do Alan Holdsworth. People say, "Oh, you're like Alan Holdsworth." You're not like Alan Holdsworth. You might think you are, but you're not.
Yeah.
Alan Holdsworth won't be equaled. He's a whole thing into himself. You know, it just won't happen again. It's like Jimi Hendrix. You like that thing that he started off. It won't happen again because Holdsworth is Holdsworth. It's just, you know, but the legato style of playing and you know, which I kind of mastered pretty well, but that's not really. They're more like tricks, you know. Like playing fast is a thing that used to be hip in the 70s or 80s maybe, but like everybody does it now, so it hasn't got any mileage left in it, and it just becomes boring. And you know, so on the Big Purple Castle, for instance, on my new album, you won't hear any of that. You'll just hear melody, you know, tunes of melodies, which is on. I picked up the slide guitar. There's a lot of slide on it, but the fast style legato playing, I would. Although I'm known for that, and people say, you know, that's amazing because it sounds impressive, but you know, it's only so much you can listen to. You know, you can only because it's actually not. It's not particularly enjoyable to listen to. It's just, oh wow, look what he can do, and that's not really the point of a solo to me.
No.
Anymore.
No, and of course the other thing that you're famous for is the Squire Strat.
The Squire Strat, I got that. Yes. Yeah, that was one of my first guitar. Yeah, that I paid £99. I paid for that on Denmark Street.
Wow. So for listeners out there who sort of, why are you talking about a Squire Strat? Obviously, that was a sort of budget version of a Fender Stratocaster, wasn't it?
Well, the big headstock Squire Strats, I thought they looked pretty cool. You know, they were, and they played really good. Actually, them early Squires were fantastic. Yeah. You know, they were as good as any Fender. I mean, I've got Fender guitars as well, and the Squire's as good, you know, as good as that. And the other thing is, you've got to be realistic about these things. Is in the fact that the guitar's always going to respond to the player. So if you can't play well, then the guitar, it doesn't matter what guitar you put you on. Oftentimes, the guitar marketing campaigns, they're all based upon this guitar has got the Eric Clapton sound. Well, it doesn't actually. It doesn't sound anything like the Eric Clapton sound. It sounds like you on a guitar. You know, so that whole con. You know, if you give me any guitar, I've been playing for 50 years. You can give me any guitar, I'll make it sound good,
and it'll sound like you.
It'll sound like me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of the things I always say to people. You know, in the way to. You know, when you accept, it's the same like with people who've got a bald head. It's like instead of going and getting hair transplants and putting cream on your head and all, just accept you've got a bald head and then all the problem's over. You go into a studio and you say, I want to sound like Hendrix. I want to sound like... You don't sound like that. You're better off just saying, plug it in, let me hear what I sound like and record that.
You've got your own unique sound.
Yeah. I think everybody has.
Everybody has their own unique sound, yeah.
If they you know have take the risk to be themselves, you know, most of us are copying other people, trying to pretend we're someone else. But if you just take the risk just to be yourself, then you know it's damn easy.
It comes, and you don't have to try that hard, I suppose.
It's what the old Taoist masters, Chang Tzu, he called it uncarved simplicity. Like when you get a horse and a horse, you know, walks forward, it walks to the left, it walks to the right, it canters, it gallops, it drinks water, it pees, you know, all the things that a horse just does naturally. That's what a horse does. Yeah. That's what he called uncarved simplicity. And the horse does that easily. Like there's no problem with it at all. It's just what the horse does.
Yeah.
And so you have a version of that for your life where there's just something that you do and you don't have to try because it's what you do. Yeah. And so on the guitar, when you're playing guitar and stuff, that's just what you do. This is what I do. I do this. I don't have to try to do it. This is what I sound like and this is what I do. When you get into that mode of musicianship and you start to accept yourself like that, then music and sounds and all that stuff, the problems go away real quick.
I was listening to some It Bites albums a couple of days ago, and one thing that I was very aware of was how the songs themselves, you throw absolutely everything into it. There's no holding back, and a lot of the songs are very positive. There is a little bit of light and shade, but they're not particularly melancholy. There's sadness in them, but the whole band, they really seem to chuck everything in there.
I think we were just we didn't feel limited, really. We were very, we didn't see ourselves as like this or that. We were just, we were experimenting a lot with melody and rhythm. A lot of it's R&B based. If nobody really locked into that, but a lot of the R&B stuff we really got into like way back in the 80s. A lot of the songs are based on an. It's very rare that in It Bites everybody just goes bang, da, dang, da, 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 jang, jang, jang at the same time. It's usually the bass will go boom, boom, and the guitar will go jadip, boom, 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 jadip, and the keyboards will go wham, bang. It's more finding pockets for the space, which is more R&B based music. So we were doing like R&B prog in a weird way.
Yeah.
And it was full of pop music influences from the Beach Boys all the way through to, all them bands like 10cc and like you said, Genesis, or it was like this whole thing we would, it's almost like a big kind of arena where you're trying to find yourself and you've got all these things bouncing around. It's like, oh, wow. And we were free, really. Yeah. We were just completely free.
And you met am I right in saying you met at school? I mean, you basically school friends, and that's how It Bites started?
Like a proper band, yeah, we really were. We were a real proper band. Like we grew up, we played the cabaret clubs together. We used to do cover numbers in the early days.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for sort of being friends before you start a band, because obviously, if you have a band and then you invite people in, you don't really know the people. But I guess at school you got to know them, the good points, the bad points. And you all gelled together and you were able to focus on the music, knowing what you're all like.
Well, we lived together. Nobody went out without the other ones. Like we always went out together, and we had our own like ecosystem. Where we're in the house, we had our, it was you were definitely, if you come into our circle, you were definitely in our circle. Like we weren't in yours.
No, and
you know what I mean. It was a real tight unit. That includes the road crew. Our roadies were with us. They lived with us too.
Yeah.
We were like a kind of like a family, like a circus tent. You know what I mean? And we'd go around and do these things, and. It was a real band, It Bites. Great guys. I love them.
Do you still keep in contact with them?
Like now and then. I don't like call them up all the time, but I'm friendly with. It isn't like I'm not friendly with them or anything like that.
Yeah.
Bob is probably the one I talk to most. The drummer, Bob. He contacts me. Dick. I don't know what Dick's doing, and I haven't really spoke to John for a long time. But John doesn't speak to anybody. He's just John's dead quiet. He isn't like. He's not like out of all of us, he was the most, kind of loner type. He wouldn't, if you give him a bag of pot and a couple of pints, you'll never hear from him again.
How did it feel when you realised, hang on a minute, we're making records, the audiences are growing, we're having hit records. Actually, we're getting pretty famous now. How did that actually feel? Did you have to pinch yourself sometimes?
We never thought about it, and I still, not to this day ever. We should have done that. One of the things about It Bites, if the person I am now was managing It Bites back then, they would have been huge. They'd have been absolutely huge, like Queen or something like that, because we were just four guys from up north with no experience. We didn't go to art college. We had no experience of the music industry. We didn't know what the scene was. We had no scene. We were like farmers, and we had nobody to give us any advice that we would listen to, because I don't, even management or anything like that, they were nice guys and all that, but they didn't understand how to speak to the likes of me or John to make us understand that in order to continue the job, we needed at least 3 singles so that they could put it on the radio that were just 3 minutes long. Like nobody found a way to tell us that. So we were just like, we don't want to do 3 minutes long. This song's 9 minutes.
Yeah.
We didn't, we weren't aware of that. We thought it was always going to burn up because we didn't have the knowledge the awareness to understand what it takes to be in the music industry, because it's not music. See, we were doing music. We thought the more that technical we got, the more musically out there we got, the more interesting we got musically, the more that people would come to our gigs and the more they'd buy our records.
Yeah.
Where the music industry is literally a fashion show. That's all it is. It's an embarrassing fashion show. It still is to this day. And so you've got Slash with his big hat. You've got, going all the way back from David Bowie in his clothes. Peter Gabriel, the guy I love the most, they didn't get any attention until he started dressing up as a flower.
Yeah.
It's a gimmick. The music industry is a gimmick. And real people who are real musicians, people like George Benson or people like that, sometimes they get lucky and they break through into the gimmick world.
Yes.
But for the most part, it's a gimmick. Like it really is. You had to have the guy from Flock of Seagulls had his hair. There's like Boy George comes along. He's half man, half woman, or whatever they want to do with that.
Yeah.
There's David Sylvian comes along with Japan. He's sitting on stools and he's all like, he's like Brian Ferry and David Bowie mixed up. Yeah. It's always a shtick. Like if you don't my friend Stephen Harris, who used to play with Zodiac Mindwarp and the Love Reaction, they would sit down and design ways in which they could get on magazines. That's what they would do. They understood it early on. They couldn't play a note on their music, on their guitars. They were absolutely dreadful in that respect.
So what you're saying is if you'd sort of, instead of getting into fifth gear with the music and all that, if you'd sort of kept in fourth, but actually spent the rest of that energy on creating more of an image, then maybe you'd have been a world-class sort of Queen type band. I think the band would have been huge because I don't think our songs were wrong. I think there's songs on, we could have just done them a different way, slightly different way. Yeah. But we didn't have anybody to sit down and tell us. But to be honest with you, after the event, like say now, when I look back at the Bites now, I'm glad we did them that way because life wouldn't have been any different anyway. You see people who've had hit records back then, like the Thompson Twins or, Depeche Mode or whatever, if I hadn't have expressed myself artistically back then, I think I would have felt not good right now. Yeah. And so when did the band decide to call it a day?
Well, there's always, when you see a football team who's losing, like even like today, you get like Newcastle who are not doing well, or you get like Norwich who are not doing well, and that kind of psychology breeds into the camp, and you realize there's no hope, and then you have to carry on, and you're being. Whereas at the front end of the thing, all the opportunities and gates were open for you. It's like this new band did Bites and they've got this and they've got that. Now it becomes like, oh, well, they didn't have a hit last time. So, and then there's another band comes on the scene. You're kind of like Liberace's old boyfriend with the record companies. Do you know what I mean? Like he stopped giving you the rings and all that stuff. And now the rings are being taken off you and given to the new, batch of puppies that are coming on the other side. Yeah. And it's very difficult and it's sad. And it's because you've been kicked out of the Golden Castle, and to try and it's a very sad time for bands when that happens to them. And you've got to have something about you to stay on your game. And unfortunately, it got so difficult for us that I just don't think it was worth carrying on. And I think, being someone who likes to delve into new things, I love to jump off cliffs and take risks. I love that, and other members of the band, weren't too keen on doing that. And so I think that tension was probably, the fact that we were being rejected everywhere, and the fact that I was looking to do new stuff. Yeah, I think it was just difficult for us, and it wasn't like anybody's fault or anything like that. It was just. But I think in our unconsciousness, because we weren't really aware of it, we were kind of like, I'm talking about it now at 58, but like, I was like 24 or something, 23 or something.
Yeah. So it sort of ran its course, but you've all obviously ended up on good terms with each other, which is good.
Well, things do run their course. Everything has seasons. And so when you're in the summertime, it's all great. But, when the winter comes, it's like, you got to dig down a bit and put your fur coat on, and hopefully you'll get through to the next spring. And then you get a spring, and you can start again. Start again. That's how life is. That's why in the darkest moment of even on my new album, The Big Purple Castle, the second album on there, which is called Underworld. And that's a depression. The whole thing is about a depression. And sometimes all you've got is the notion and the knowledge that the springtime has to come because it's against the laws of physics for it not to.
Yeah. That's
so no matter how
it?
bad it gets, and you know, how bad you get down and dark, you know, and people are dying, or there's things happening wrong, or you lose this, or you know that springtime's coming.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That's very reassuring, isn't it?
It's all I had, actually. Like if I go back 2 or 3 years now, because it's all I had at that point in that deep, dark place where you get to. And here I am now in the springtime. It's, you know, I can't even relate to what I was in back then, you know, because it doesn't make any sense now. I'm in the springtime. The world's lit up again. I've got new this, new that. There's new growth. There's new areas of life. There's new, you know, so I can't really sing those songs like I sang them the last time. But when I sang them 2 years ago, I was in that deep, dark place. You know, I meant it.
Yeah. And so when It Bites concluded, you were, I believe you were touring with people like Robert Plant, and you did a stint with various other people. Is that right?
Yeah, I did about 2 or 3 years with Robert, which that was a great time. That was a wonderful time because, you know, I got to do the music business 5-star. You know, it was really great to do that. Like you're playing 20,000 seats a night. You've got, you know, it was just private jets and you know, I did that for ages. And I love Robert. Robert, I mean, I absolutely love him. I really do. I mean, I think he's hilarious. I think he's incredibly intelligent. And I think he takes risks like nobody's business. And he never settled. He was a great role model for me, Robert. Because, you know, he got criticised a lot for things that he's done, and people said, what are you doing? Why don't you just go back with Zeppelin and stuff like that? And he just, he wants to be creative. He doesn't think it's over.
No, he's always moving on, isn't he?
Always, and I just love that.
Alison Krauss, yeah.
Yeah, he's got that new album now with Alison. And the thing is that, you know, he never stopped.
No.
And you have to, you know, you've got to take your hat off to somebody like that. You can't, you know, most people stop in their glorious moment, you know, whether it's like Keith Richards in the Rolling Stones or, you know, everybody stops in that time that they had. You know, like they have like a time, it's like a city, like, you know, say London stopped in like the early 1900s. It started to grow again now, but the you know, things like when you have that successful boom time, yes, and then everybody just stops. This is how we're going to be. It's just repeat that again. Well, Robert didn't do that. He said, I'm interested in this, and what if I do that? What happens if I do this or do, you know, and I always go to see him when he comes into town to New York, and we hang out a bit. We have a bit of fun. And but he's always got a really interesting show going on. He's always got like some guy with a weird instrument he's brought in, or he's got some angle on something that he's done, or you have to, you know, these are artists. These are proper artists who will take that risk to reach for the sun and not just sit back and take applause. Yeah. I mean, even myself, I mean, how much applause can I get before I'm satisfied? I've been applauded all my life. Yeah. I mean, imagine what it's like for him. You know, I'm like a tiny little, you know, in terms of applause. I mean, so if you're just going to sit back and that's what your life is, you just get applauded. Yeah. And you do the same thing over and over again to be applauded over and over again. I mean, I just don't think that's artistic. I wouldn't say that's artistic integrity. I would say the artists of the world were here to jump off the cliffs to see if we can fly.
Yes, because that's what started you off, I guess.
Yeah.
That risk taking.
When you first start off and you're doing that new stuff, I remember playing Smoke on the Water for the first time on my knee. I had the guitar laid down on my knee, and I went, and it wasn't even tuned to it. It was just, I just went, wah, 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 ah, ah, ah. And I thought, wow, you know, it was like it never got any better than that for me.
It's great stuff. I mean, you've had a huge sort of career and repertoire that you've done with your solo albums. You've produced people like Quint Starkey, for example. What are you most proud of?
Wow, that's I think the last one, that album I've just done, is probably the one I'm most proud of in terms of
the Big
musically.
Purple Castle.
I think it's. I mean, because it's. I really think. I mean, I won't be making an album like that for a while. I'll tell you that, because I think, you know, because it's authentic. I mean, the lengths we went to make it sound good. Yeah. You know, we didn't use plugins. We didn't use it sounds unbelievable, the album, if you put it on. It's very natural sounding. It hasn't got any EQ on it. It's got no, you know, it's a really beautiful sounding natural album. And it's also a very honest album, and it's a very risky album. I mean, I started playing slide guitar, which I've never done before. You know, I like when you've done as many albums as I have, you have to do something to trigger creativity. And the only thing that triggers creativity is risk and fear.
Do something different. Do
something different. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. And now you've got this slide guitar and you're like, what the hell is this?
That sounds... I mean, for listeners who aren't fully aware of, on the recording process, about plugins, could you just explain what they are and why you didn't use them, please?
Because they actually make the sound horrible of your instruments. Like, they degrade the sound. What happens is with a... This is a bit boring and techie, but I'll be as fast as I can. So when you have, let's say, for instance, I record an acoustic guitar and I go, dung, 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 and I play it back. What people do is they put a plugin on it. So they might have an equalizer plugin. And as soon as they put that equalizer plugin on the channel, then it degrades the sound in a very subtle way. Sometimes it's as subtle as just taking the speaker grills off your speaker.
Oh, is it?
You know, it's like real subtle like that. But when you've got 48 tracks of it, you start to hear it and it's horrible. And it's got this nasty kind of horrible sound to it. And then you start EQing it. Then you start adding treble on. And you start adding frequencies on there that are not in the world. Like when I say S to you and I go S, that's how it sounds. When you start EQing things, it goes S, S. Yeah. And people have gotten so used to that because they think they think that's the way to go. Yeah. But it doesn't actually sound like the music they recorded. When they mix it, it's like, well, what the hell is that?
So I suppose the net result of how you've recorded it, it's got more of an organic sound, would you say?
Massively. It just sounds like it in the room.
Yeah. And how many other musicians are on it?
There's me, Paul Brown, and my kid just doing hand claps and stuff like that. My friend Paul Brown is a bass player. And that's it. I did all the keyboards and all the rest of it and the drums and all that stuff. But
what we'll do is I'll put some links on the show notes, Francis, so people can have the opportunity to hear your music.
Put it onto Bandcamp. If they go to Bandcamp, there's some previews on there. Yeah, they can preview it there.
And how would you describe the music for listeners that would like to know what it sounds like?
Well, I think by this point I'm developing my own melodic structure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that, I mean, obviously I've still got them old influences in me somewhere, but I think especially with the slide guitar, I mean, I can't play slide guitar very well, so it doesn't sound like anybody because I can't do it. You know what I mean? I can't go like, well, I sound like Howling Wolf. It's like, well, you don't actually do. You sound like, you sound like some farmer with a bit of metal in his hands. So it's, so I think it's very authentically me. My melodic structure. I oftentimes, when I change the picture frame of my work, which is what I tend to do, I'm trying to find out who I am through music. And so if I have a certain picture frame, let's say it's blues, and then I change it to like rock, and then I change the picture frame to like jazz, and I paint it to pop, the thing that's there all the time, the thing that is the same, that's me.
Yeah.
So there's a similarity. There's something solidly authentic about who I am.
Yes.
And that's the closest I've got to expressing it. That's why I'm most proud of it.
Yeah, it must be, if you're a creative person, to come up with something like that, because it must be very, very satisfying. Is it something like 42 tracks on it, I read? 41.
Some of them are just like bits of fun and bits of laugh, because that was, again, expressing my Cumbrian humour. And, there's just some funny things about the Northern Working Men's Clubs on there that, I just wanted to put on because it's part of who I am.
Yeah, that's great. So it's available on Bandcamp, but people can buy the whole album, can they?
Yeah. Go get the album. Yeah, no, they can preview about 4 or 5 tracks, I think, to see if they like it, and then if they like it, just buy it, and it'll come. You can get it in like, if any audiophile people out there who like into them audio, what you call them, audio geeks or whatever you want to call them, which is what I am.
Yes.
There's the 96K 24-bit FLAC files, which are absolutely tremendous. They sound unbelievable. They really do. I mean, it's the best sounding album I've ever done in my life. It's not as loud as other albums, so you might have to turn it up like 3 or 4 dB, because we're not using compressors, or we're not using, all these like normalizers and all this stuff that plugins do. There's no digitization on it at all, apart from when it goes into the computer.
Yeah. And is it available on vinyl as well, on CD?
No, it'll be on vinyl next year.
Oh,
it's
yes.
available on vinyl's coming, yeah, but we're not doing CDs for a million different reasons. First of all, for me to do a CD, it's going to cost me like 25 grand up front.
Yeah.
And then I get stuck with a garage full of boxes of CDs. And then I can't, when you send them off, if I send one to you in England, you buy one, it'll cost about like $50 or something because it's a triple album.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get charged $15 import duty.
Yeah.
And the sleeve notes are going to be small. And so what we did is we took the album sleeve and we made it into a full website for itself. So www.thebigpurplecastle.com is the album sleeve. And there's 60 videos on there. All the lyrics are on there. All the information are on there. So it's 50 million times more than what you'd get on a CD sleeve. Because if you're going to replace something like a CD, you got to make sure what you put in its place is better than what you had before.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I like vinyl. I mean, I've got probably about 300 LPs up in the loft of my house. And I think the joists in the loft, the rafters in the loft have probably just about had it now. I don't think I can put any more up. But we've got a lot of shops, probably, I don't know whether you have it in the States, but we've got a lot of shops in England where they've sprung up selling vinyl. And one
of my best friends, Chris Topham, he runs Plain Groovy Records, right? He's actually coming here next week, Chris. He's put all my other stuff out on vinyl. So this one will be on vinyl probably February or March or something like that. But I have vinyl here at my house. I think the sound of vinyl, not new records, because the new records are digitized. I've got like Tea for the Tillerman, which was never digitized. It was recorded on tape, it was mastered on tape, and it was burnt straight to the vinyl. And it sounds unbelievable. It hasn't got that horrible frequency thing in.
I just
digital stuff's got.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that there's more. It's more organic and there's a bigger sound. There's more stuff in there.
It's more detailed, yeah. But what you do, if you start to pay attention to what CDs sound like and how they've been mixed now, or if you go back to like an early, say, Cat Stevens record, there's something about it that you can listen to it over and over again. When you put the CDs on with that digitized weird stuff on it. And it's a weird thing to explain. It's really difficult because it's subtle, but it isn't. It almost isn't the sound. It's almost like something like makes you feel sick. There's something weird coming off the digital songs that isn't on the vinyl. The vinyl hasn't got it on from the early. Any of the albums that haven't been digitized, they absolutely sound amazing to me.
Yeah, they do. I have to say. I'm probably showing my age now, but I remember doing my paper round, and a single in the early 70s was about 50 pence.
Yeah.
Which was like half a week's paper round. And
that's exactly right.
I didn't mind spending half a week's paper round on a song. And I think albums at the time were about $2.25 or $3.25. So relatively speaking, they were a lot more than what they are now, should we say. So if I find, and this is just my view, I have Spotify, but what happens is you put an album on, and you think, yeah, I like that track. I'll flick it onto the next one. But you never actually get into it because there's so much that you can do in terms of just switching it on. Whereas when you bought an album, I wouldn't say you made yourself like it, but you got your money's worth and you made sure you listened to every track, and you actually found, after listening to the album, those tracks that weren't singles and weren't instantly likable, you actually found that they grew on you. And they became probably the better tracks later on. Do you know where I'm coming from?
Absolutely. I had the same thing with things like with The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, or, Selling England by the Pound with Genesis. I would listen to, the beginning of Dancing with the Moonlit Night, and I would kind of skip over the end bit. But like now I go to the end part of that song and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So, that you kind of get to discover the first initial reject, things that you would kind of like, it's all right. You get into the depth of it.
Yeah, I think so. So moving on to the contemporary music scene, what artists are you listening to at the moment, Francis?
Oh, I don't like anybody now.
No,
there's nothing in it for me anymore, because what happens is like if each generation like what I'm looking for in music, the thing that it does my soul. The thing that is, nobody does it anymore. The closest I would get would be some R&B records with the melodies they do.
Yeah.
I remember the last thing I really listened to was about 10 years ago was T-Pain.
Oh,
and all that stuff like that with some of the R&B stuff. But modern day music, I don't like. It just has no. It's not authentic to me. I don't hear any authenticity in it. It's kind of like it's, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like, it's synthetic. It's all synthetic. It's like somebody's had an idea. It's like, you know, when you get like a film like, say, Harold and Maude. Have you ever seen that film?
Yes, I have, yeah.
So Harold and Maude versus Terminator 3.
Yeah.
That is how, that's the difference for me, where if I look at and Harold and Maude, when I look at the cinematography and I look at how the coloured fields they've placed in the background and the dress style and it's fascinating to me. Whereas Terminator 3 has all these effects and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And it's just kind of like, it's all right, but it's synthetic.
Yes, and a lot more money's probably spent on it.
But you know, kids nowadays, that's how that's what they're brought up on. So they're going to love that. But for me, you know, I'm old, dude. I'm 58. You know, and I have no, you know, I'm not trying to be modern or youthful or anything like that. Like, I like, you know, when I hear like the Beach Boys or something like that, I don't think there's nobody doing that now.
No. Do you find seeing as you sort of fairly decided this album would be very much more an organic sound, do you find yourself listening to any sort of classical or folk music, that sort of thing?
I can handle all the stuff. Sometimes I just don't find any artist interesting. I don't like because of the way that culture has influenced people. I don't believe them. I can always smell a rat on them. Like, I don't believe it. Like, if I hear somebody like Morrissey, I believe him.
Yes.
He's got a perspective. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's got his own perspective, and I believe him when he sang things like, like even go back to the early days of the Smiths. Even then, I believed him when they first come out. Punctured bicycle on the hillside desolate, will nature make a man of me yet? That's just beautiful lyrics.
Brilliant.
And his melodic sense, was so unique and so beautiful, like on what he did. Or even people like the guy from Coldplay, like I kind of believe him. I'm not a fan of their music, but he's got a perspective. Ian Brown from the Stone Roses, when I worked with Ian, he had a perspective.
Yeah.
You know, there's there's no perspective now. Like that isn't like an angle that anybody's got. They're just, I don't know what they're doing, but there's my kids love it, by the way. You know, I've got like 10-year-old kids. They're like, Dad, you got to check this out. And it's just, I can't hear the humans. I can't hear any humans. I just hear this synthetic, processed, like loud kind of wall of sound.
Yeah.
That is, I can't hear the humans in it. It's all auto-tuned. It's all everything's affected with plugins. And there's no like kind of like howling wolf on a guitar in a room, or even Paul McCartney's early records. You listen to them, you can hear the humans in the room.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So if there's anybody listening who, I hope we haven't put them off, but if there's anybody listening who was very interested in entering into the music industry, what advice would you give them?
I don't think I can give them advice now, because there's two ways to go at it. There's one is the music industry, and the other one is music, and they're not connected in any shape or form.
Yeah.
You can be skilled in if you want to like be famous and you want to do that whole thing, then you're better off doing like acting lessons or looking at fashion or looking at gimmicks and things like that, and how to get because you don't really have to have any musical talent in order to do that. No. Some people do, of course, but if you're interested in music, then I think the further we go along is the less, traditionally speaking, I think there's less and less room for musicians to be in the industry like that. I don't think it's based on that anymore.
Do you find? Yeah, I know what you mean. And do you find that you sometimes just play your guitar or your instruments just for the joy of playing, rather than sort of thinking, well, I've got to write a song?
I do it all the time. I mean, I'm an avid classical guitar player. I mean, I have these 20 studies by Fernando So, which was the Segovia studies, and I've been trying to play them now for about 20 years.
Did you start off on the classical guitar, Francis?
No, I didn't. I just started off on an old Hofner.
Are you learning the classical guitar with music?
Yeah, I read music and stuff. So I went. Yeah. It's actually a funny story, because in the midst of my kind of arrogant ego days, when I'm kind of thinking I'm all that, and I go to this old classical. My girlfriend at the time bought me this classical guitar, and it was a fortune. So I thought, I better do something with it. So I go down to this old Spanish guy for lessons, and he was an old classical concert guitar player, right? He was, which I didn't even know what it was back then. I just, I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't understand it. I didn't have any appreciation for it. And so I go in and I go, hey, how you doing? And he goes, he's about 78, this guy. And he goes, let me see what you can play so I can find out where to start you off. And I picked up the guitar and I went, and he looked at me and he went, what is this shit? He goes, this is a trick. It is a shit trick.
Yeah, he didn't like tricks.
And so from that point on, I realized that what I'm doing shit tricks.
So you thought, well, I'm going to get into the problem. Did you ever play this one, Francis? I've just got my guitar with me at the moment, actually. Can you hear it okay?
Yeah, go on.
Bit out of tune, I think.
I don't know what that one is. What's that?
I thought it's by Fernandez Sor. It's a very early sort of exercise island, but
I haven't. It isn't on the 20 studies. I haven't heard that one.
Right. What about this one?
That's Romanza.
It is indeed. Anyway, enough of that. Not here to interview me about my guitar.
Well, why not? You might as well.
We can swap it round one day.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I do find just sitting with the acoustic guitar quite therapeutic, actually.
I mean, the classical stuff is because it's constantly driving you out of your mind because it's so far removed from like what blues and stuff. You need, first of all, all of them 4 fingers on your left hand, otherwise you ain't doing anything.
Yeah.
And so it strengthens your fingers up so they're of equal strength. And because most of the guitar players are using their first and third fingers all the time, they tend to be doing that. And so, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, because you're playing acoustically, because you're playing with no electrics and everything, I find that it benefits your electric guitar playing by, as you said, strengthening your fingers, all 4 fingers.
It will definitely give, it just, what it does, it gives you more colours on your palette, so you can, I mean, I have guitar students, I have guitar classes on Patreon, and, I watch them come forward because they don't see, if I was to teach a blues guitar player what I'm teaching these guys, they'd be like, I can't do that. I can't. They're full of excuses why they can't. But whereas these classical guitar students don't know any different, they just do it.
Yeah, yeah. And
they just do it. They have nothing in between them and doing it.
No. And do you find that when you're playing the classical guitar, you're holding it in the way that's in quotes correct with your little footstool?
No.
No,
I'm too lazy for that. I like to sit back. What I'll do is I'll get the guitar, I'll put the music sheet on the stand, and I'll watch soccer and play it. That's what I'll be doing right after I get off here with you. I'll be going 2:30. I'll be watching some soccer games. I'll just sit down. I'll have a cup of tea or something, and when I'm watching soccer, I'm playing guitar,
twiddling around.
Yeah. There's always a piece with that classical stuff where you're just like, damn, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
It's like, and Fernando Sor is like, he was, them 20 studies were designed to drive you out of your mind, and they definitely do. They do. But it's what I find it does is it gives you a sense of wholeness as a guitar player. It really does. Like when you play one of the pieces, it's like, I feel like I'm a proper guitar player now.
Yes. Yeah, no, I can recommend it like you can for any.
Whereas beforehand, I was just doing shit tricks.
I don't think that's true, but there might be tricks, but they don't sound like tricks. The other thing I wanted to ask was the album itself. Obviously, you can download it and everything. Is it available on Spotify?
No. I don't think any musician should do that. I think that's one of the, the saddest things around in music now. I think it's really, really sad how we've sold ourselves down the line because, even if you're a really successful artist, that Spotify aren't paying you nothing, and the guys himself, he's going to space in a rocket ship as a billionaire, and there's musicians who have provided all that content for them, and they just don't get paid. And so I think it's, they've sold all these musicians on like, well, people will have your music available. And it's like, dude, it's like, you've got no value for yourself. And so it's a great deal for the public, of course, so if you're a music listener, it's a great deal. But for an artist, it's probably the worst thing you can do. I think max, you should put 2 tracks up there. And,
just to get a bit of coverage. But no, I also think it's not particularly good for listeners. I think it's good for listeners who want a bit of background music. But like I said earlier, I think that value and quality that you get by listening to an album and getting into every track, I don't think you can do that.
I've no idea, but I mean, I'm not sure. I think a lot of people, don't listen to music the same way that. When I listen to an album, I'm deeply in it. Like I can't listen to anything else. It's like I'm locked in it. Like that's, and I think a lot of people from my generation were like that. Like we knew every hi-hat tick, we knew the creaks on John Bonham's kick drum pedal. We knew, we were so into it. We knew everything about these tracks, but I just don't think people are listening to like music like that now. I think it's more about MP3 and that horrible kind of like, let me hear you say yo, hear you say yeah. I hate that stuff. It's like the worst thing for me, that.
Yeah, I think the other thing about albums that we had, I remember taking them round my friends' houses and to parties and everything, and you had something big to take round.
Yes.
Had it under one arm while you were cycling there. You'd put it on a party, somebody would knock the record player after drinking too much cider, and you'd have a little scratch on it. And every time you played it after that, you'd hear it sort of, it remind you of that party where people got a bit silly.
I think so, yeah. But this is like the, when you get to my age now at 58, I have no urge to be modern.
No.
In that respect, you know what I mean? Like I use modern equipment and I can use it to my advantage, like the technology. But in terms of me trying to be like youthful and young, I don't dress like that. I don't do that. Like, in order to be like the rock guy, you have the spiky haircut and you wear plimsolls and you have, you don't go ever be seen with your children online. And you'd like all this. I don't do any of that. My kids are on nearly every photograph I've got, and I'm a big fat git, and I've got like a big fat belly, and I've got a bald head, and I don't care. I don't wear that uniform of what I'm supposed to do. Like I don't want to walk around like Keith Richards or somebody like that. I think it's because I can see the old man in them. You know what I mean? I'm looking at it. I'm going, dude, you're an old man. What are you doing?
I think it's probably a bit more respect if you just let yourself be who you are. And
be you, yeah. I'm 58. Yeah. I don't want to be thin and like with a 6-pack and all. I'm 58. Yeah. It's like, leave me alone. It's like I'm 58. It's like I want to eat a bit of this and a bit of that. And it's like, but this whole thing where you've got to like look, like to take part in the music industry. This is one of the reasons, by the way, though, that that you won't get accepted in the music industry, because people want that, and so if I'm not prepared to do it, then I can't complain. So I don't, complain about it. It's just, but I'm not desperate for recognition. I don't need any,
No, exactly. Now you've got a lot of other things going on. I was going to ask you about your songwriting, which is obviously quite an important part of the whole process. What's your sort of process in constructing a song, for instance?
Feeling. I have feelings that I want to try and, there's certain feelings that I have that I want to try and put onto the song so that when you listen to it back, you get the same feeling I got.
Right. So rather than sort of thinking I'm going to write a love song or whatever.
No, I don't do that. No.
No. So it's a certain emotion, a certain feeling that comes. And you think
it's a feeling. I'm feeling based. It's all like if it doesn't feel a certain way to me, I won't do it. I'll throw it out. Like I'm not interested. Yeah. That's what I'm saying about new music. If it doesn't have that thing in it that I'm looking for, it's like you go hunting for the thing that you want, and if you can't find the thing that you're hunting for, you're not interested.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
So I'm hunting for those. Even melancholic feelings, or those certain, even if I go back and think about them songs from my childhood, like "Hey kids, let me tell you how I met your mom," bow, 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 bow. There was feelings in that. Even those, "No, I can't forget the evening," they made me feel a certain way.
Yeah,
all them old pop songs, them old 70s pop songs, and there's something in that for me that. Yeah. It was almost like it was like my mother psychologically made me feel comfortable and safe.
Yes.
In a world, in a life that hasn't really been comfortable and safe, I could listen to that stuff or certain songs, and when that feeling came, certain melodic melodies would make me feel a certain way. But like, oh, there it is, I love that song.
So do you find that when you write a new song, you've got to wait for it to come, or is it something you can sort of you can actually force it a little bit, maybe? Or do you wake up?
I'll just get a download. I'll get a massive download of like about I can't really. I tend to clean up my downloads. So what'll happen is I'll be like, oh, Blue, I'll just start singing. I've got this song, and I've got them, and it all starts coming out. And then after I get it down, I'll put it on a cassette or something, and not a cassette, iPhone, or I'll put it on somewhere to record it, and then I'll clean it up afterwards.
So I mean,
I don't think there's no thinking goes into my stuff. I just start playing. Like I could pick the guitar up right now and just start playing, and I could get a song out of it. Like I would just download it, right? It would just come in. It would be there, and it would just come through.
So from a practical perspective, I'm just giving this as an example. You could perhaps be in the shower and you've got something. Oh, I like that. You'll get straight out and record it on your phone, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Sometimes I dream songs, and then the melody, and I can't remember them when I wake up, and I'll just have a little one line from it or something, or I'll know what the melody was, but it was come from a dream.
Do the melody and the lyrics come at the same time?
Often do, yeah. But then I have to clean them up, or I'll have to add them up to make sense.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'll get like 3/4 of a song, like with the lyrics and stuff like that. Because I'll know what it is, and I'll know what I'm trying to sing about, and then all of a sudden. Like a lot of the new album, there was a whole bunch of songs lying around from 30 or 40 years ago, which I hadn't cleaned up, but they were all ideas of that sort of way. That I'd done them to that degree, but then when I took the Big Purple Castle and I put them on there and I cleaned them up and I made them into proper songs, Whereas before they were just these like a mechanic lying around in your. Has all these parts lying around the garage. I have all these songs lying around in my head, like tons of them. Even now, I've got a blues album in my mind right now.
Have you?
That I'm starting, but I'm not going to do it until I get rid of promote this until February the 1st.
Yeah, and the album, are you going to be on the road again?
Probably not. I mean, I like going on tour and doing that. The old It Bites stuff. We always have fun doing that. We usually do like a weekend every year.
Yeah.
And I love doing it because I get together with the band and I don't have to like work too hard. I already know the parts and I can kind of just go and have a laugh, and the band come in and we eat good food and we have a nice van and we stay in nice places and we comfortable and we always sold out and we always have a nice, it's kind of like that. So there's no like risk in it or anything. It's just, it's like, hey, do you want to get together and do 3 or 4 gigs? Yeah. All right. Then we do that.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of, going out on the road, I don't know. Maybe the blues record I might do it with the blues thing.
One thing I noticed on your website is about the house concerts that you do, where you basically just go around to somebody's house and you give a concert.
I love that.
Could you tell us a bit about those, please?
It actually started in 1996. I actually invented house concerts, believe it or not.
Did you?
I for real, I did. I don't mean that arrogantly. I mean, I actually did.
Yeah.
And it was back in 1996, and I had a big hit over here in America with Too Much Satin. It was from one of my albums called Tall Blonde Helicopter.
Yeah.
And so I was flying high in the charts over here, and things were going good. And these Grateful Dead fans come up to me after the gig, and they went, "Hey, bro, what's happening, man? We follow the Dead, and we're blah da 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 da." And they're like, they would tell me all about that. I said, I've only heard a couple of songs by the Grateful Dead, and they're telling me all about how they follow them, and they're telling me how Jerry Garcia's guitar playing and all this stuff. And then one of them said, "Why don't you come around to our bedroom? Why don't you do a concert for us in our bedroom?" And I said, "All right, I will. Go on then." And so it was about 2 weeks later, I went round to this house of these Grateful Dead fans.
Yeah.
And they were all in there. They were stoned out of their brains. And we sat down for like 2 hours and I sang Tall Blonde Helicopter, the whole album. And we just talked. It wasn't like a gig. I was just sitting on chairs in the house and we'd play some songs. And when I left, I said to my friend, you know what? That's the most fun I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah.
Playing music. It was amazing. It was just like, there was no amplification, there was no sound checks, I just sat there and played these guys these songs and they listened intently and they clapped and they were like, whoa, and they'd ask me questions, whoa, what was that about? And so I never did it again for a long time. And then about 15 or 16 years ago, my friend said, "Will you come and do a concert for us?" And I went, "Oh yeah." And I remembered it and I went and did this concert. It was the same thing. And so I put it online with anybody like a house concert, and we had like thousands of requests from all around the world.
Wow.
It was insane. So I was on the road for 16 years doing literally 150 shows, 200 shows a year. It was like, at one point, it was like 5 a week. Sometimes it was, the record was 17 in a row when we went to Europe.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Is it just you that goes, or do you go with anybody else at all? Or?
Well, sometimes I take friends with me. Sometimes my girlfriend would come. Sometimes it just depends. Like, say, like we'd do a West Coast trip, and my friend Chris Topham, who does the Plain Groovy records, Chris likes coming out on the road with me. Maybe we usually have like a boys week, a boys week or something like that. And he comes out. We'll go to California. I'll do like 6 house concerts out there. He'll go to see some record stores, and we'll go eat some food, and we go to Japan, or we'll do, like
it sounds great.
New Zealand we went to, and Australia and Switzerland and, Norway, and like, it's crazy. Yeah. Absolutely crazy.
And you just go there and you talk or you tell stories as well as play.
It's like the old troubadour thing. Yeah, you go and tell stories, and you can't show up at somebody's house like a rock dude or anything like that. It's embarrassing. You have to just go as a guy. It's like, hey, what's going on? Like all that kind of like, all that pomp of the music industry. It doesn't make any sense doing that. So you show up and have fun with the people. You're not trying to be something you're not.
And one of the other things I'd like to talk about through our mutual friend Greg is your charity, the CKDCF charity.
Yeah.
Which is a children's charity, I believe.
Greg comes up there. Yeah, Greg comes to see us. He's always there. Yeah, we do it. You just got to give a bit back. Sometimes I think that, I don't know, some things matter to certain people. Some people like Black Lives Matter. Some people like, the restoration fund for a cathedral. Some people, I was on the cancer wards, the leukemia wards in Whitehaven Hospital, and it was just heartbreaking. It was just like, dude, these kids, they don't even know they're going to die, and they're laughing and smiling and all that, and they haven't got long to live. And it's just like, dude, it's like, what the hell's going on? Well, when my mum and dad died, my mum and dad were such generous people, really, really generous people. They would feed everybody, used to come to our house for dinner and all that. And they were just dreadfully kind. And I thought, it would be a real shame, if that giving stopped. And so I set up the charity in their name. And so we do that. We do it very, it's very low key. We're not trying to like be Oxfam or something. We're not trying to pretend we're good people or nice people. We're not doing it for grandstanding. People just come up there like Greg, and we very quietly raise a load of money, and we send it off to things like, we braille computers, and we do, we pay for the blind and the deaf and the cancer wards, and, playgrounds for this, and, we're just in the community like that.
Yeah. Well, I'll put the details on the show notes on that.
Great.
If people wanted to participate in it, it's in the north of England, is it? Where you actually this event?
Yeah, we do like what we do is we like, if you're a house concert host, we basically pay your hotel, right?
Yeah.
So if you've already booked a house concert in the past, we'll get your hotel and we pay for you. We ask that you raise money and do a sponsored walk with us, which we do on Saturday morning. We have a concert there, and I've had people like Steve Hackett up there. We've had Squeeze up there. We've had Mike from The Alarm. We've had Marillion up there. We've had like Robert Plant up there. We've had, there's like some serious people go up there to play.
Yeah.
And, it's all very low key. And we do, they go into it. We have this like church hall, this market hall, 300 people. That's all we can do because there's no stadium, there's no bigger places around there. We do 300 people and town council, and we eat some good food. We go on a sponsored walk. We have, there's just a bunch of stuff going on. Friday night dinner. We have a big Friday night dinner where we hand out the checks to the people who are sponsoring and stuff like that. And
how far's the walk? How far's the walk?
About 3 or 4 miles.
What town does it take place in?
Egremont.
Oh, Egremont, which is where you're from.
Which means the Mound of Sorrow. There's a castle in there, and it's called Egremont Castle. And Mont comes from the French word mound. And Aigre, I think, has a French root, a French beginning as sorrow.
Oh, right.
And so it's the Mound of Sorrow.
Yeah.
Which is a good place for somebody like me to be born.
No, it's great, isn't it, that you can give back like that and get everybody else involved. Now, one of the other things that I noticed on your website was your interest in astrology.
Yeah.
Is that something you could talk about?
Well, yeah, no, I love it. It started out with psychology. I've always been into psychology, but I was studying, I have my psychology degrees, right? And so when I was at college, I went back to college when I was like 40. Yeah. And but I got into Jungian psychology. Carl Jung was a really prominent psychologist, a really, really interesting man. He was a brilliant man, actually. But he was studying astrology, and I thought, what the hell is this man? Because he would say things, right? And I didn't even know what he was saying existed as a thought. I'd be like, oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah. I never even thought to think, like, how did he think that? He was like, and then he starts going on about astrology.
Yeah.
And, in depth. And so I started to look at it, and I got involved with the Jungian Institute in Switzerland. And they had loads of Jungian psychologists there who were also studying astrology. Because it's not what you think it is. It isn't like horoscope charts and stuff like that. It's kind of, it's a very profound study. To anybody who's left-brained, who's factually based, it just sounds like a load of bollocks. But the world exists in duality. There's a left side and right side of the brain, so to speak, and so the left is a fact. So this conversation, right? So you could say it's a fact that we're having this conversation, like we're speaking to each other. That's a fact, right?
Yeah.
But the color of the conversation, like, is it a good conversation? Is it an enjoyable conversation? That's the other side of the brain that we attach meaning to.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So when we get off the thing, they say to you, hey, Bob, how was your thing with Francis? And you say, it was absolutely terrible. He just rabbited on a load of nonsense for 2 hours. And somebody says to me, how was your conversation with Bob? And I say, oh, it was great. Now, it's the same conversation.
Yeah.
But it means different. So that side of life is where the Jungian stuff is. That's why it doesn't really make any sense in the scientific arena. It's not science. You know what I mean?
No.
It's a study of like the unknown, and if you're not really versed in it, it just sounds like a load of crap until you get into, the mechanics of it. It's like, oh, and you start to see it, because I really got into it to prove it wrong.
Yeah. And
there was a lady called Dr. Liz Green who teaches at the Regent's Park College in London, and I did a course with her there, and I just couldn't believe what. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. That's all I can say. It was insane. And it wasn't things like, you will be blah, da, 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 da. It was basically like saying your relationship with your father was blah, da, 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 da. And because of that, you've ended up of choosing weak men in order to blah, like it was like really detailed stuff. And I'm just like, dude, what the, what are you talking about? And so from then on, it's been, the last 35 years, it's been, a real beautiful thing for me.
So is this
been amazing?
So is this all to do with star signs then?
Star signs? It isn't really like star signs like that. That's kind of like, that's not what it is. It's like it's like there's different ways of looking at the world. You can look at it through biology. You can look at it. Let's say I have a tin. I've got a silver tin. Now you look at it from beneath. You go, wow, look at the tin. It's got writing under there. Now I'm looking at it from above and I'm saying, there's no writing on there. What are you talking about? There's no writing at all. Somebody's looking at it from the side and saying, now them hinges are really amazing. You're going, what hinges? You're talking rubbish. We have there's different lens in which to look at the world. You can look at it through many different ways.
Yeah.
And an astrological lens or a biological lens or a scientific lens or a astrophysicist lens or you can see the world in many, many, many different ways.
Yeah.
And it makes sense in that because you're looking. It's not the only way to look at it, and it's not. But to say it's rubbish that's not accurate.
No, I suppose I can understand what you're saying, but I suppose where I'm being challenged is I'm thinking astrology is where Saturn is in where that is in the solar system and all that sort of thing. Whereas this isn't so much that then.
Well, it is, but it's not in how you think. Like you'd have to study it in order to understand what it is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you can't just say if you give me I've got the thing here. Give me your date of birth. What is your date of birth? Can you do that?
Yeah. 23rd of December, 1958.
December the 23rd, 1958. What time?
I think it was about 4 p.m.
4 p.m. Yeah. Whereabouts?
In Windsor, Berkshire.
Windsor, UK. So I'll give you a Saturn reading just so you can understand what they mean to you, because you're asking about Saturn, right? So Saturn is like from that lens, right? That is like from the Saturnian lens, it's about physical reality. So Saturn is physical. Saturn is where you would find limitations and restrictions, right?
Yeah.
So if you truly were born at that time, first of all, the meaning of life is one of the biggest difficulties that you've got in your astrological lens. They would say that, like, there's a lack of meaning. Sometimes you've got Saturn in Sagittarius, so sometimes people would follow things like religions and get hung out to dry. Like, then they'll try another religion. Yeah. Or they'll be atheists, or they won't have any meaning at all. And they won't be able to, see the meaning of life at all. So in the Saturnian sense, this is one of the difficulties you've got, and it comes from your father, because it's right on your father's thing. So there might be an authoritarian religious father that you're rebelling against. It could be about that, or there's something caught up with it. I mean, it's not just religion. You could just as easily be a lawyer. It's the law. You see what I mean? Saturn in Sagittarius is the law.
Yeah. So
you could have been a lawyer too. You could have been interested in the laws of life, or from the courtroom to the Bible. And if you were truly born at that time, you've also got the moon in Gemini, so you've got no attention span anywhere. And you're feminine, your emotional responses to things are, you get bored really quick, and you need to do a whole different bunch of things, and you need to talk, and you need to keep things fast. You're a bit like Greg. That's why you two get along so well.
Interesting.
Mars in Taurus, you like your cash. You're very like that. You're a progressive thinker. You're not like you got Uranus in Leo, so you like, you're not going to think out of the, you're not going to think out of the box, although you do have a traditional relationship sense with your Venus in Capricorn. So Venus in Capricorn, you're a bit snobby, you're a bit kind of, you've got that side to your nature. You have to split up these things into pieces, like a car. So they're different, different parts of the machine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and the last thing I'll say is that if you were truly born at that time, then you're incredibly detailed person who can't stand things being not organized, and not, like, every single thing you do is incredibly detailed and sorted out and put into place and organized, and the sense of order, which is what you're seeking all the time. Whether it's, you could also be a hypochondriac, because with your Saturn in the 6th house, it means that you could have illnesses that are based upon your meaning, that I can't get into now because it gets too personal from that point on.
Yeah.
And so it's like that, I'm just being dead quick, would sit down for like 2 hours, but
that's interesting.
And that's either bollocks or it isn't.
Yeah. Well, you've been studying this for 35 years.
Yeah. But I understand. I understand why people say it's nonsense. I understand, because it's not science.
No.
So I don't mind people saying that, but but there's, it's like when you study fairy tales and things like that, it's like the story of Snow White, where the queen looks in the mirror and she says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And the mirror says, "You are." And now the queen's all happy because she's the fairest of them all. And then the young girl Snow White comes along, and now the queen's furious because she's not the fairest of them all, and she tries to kill Snow White. And we know that story from Disney. But Jung says the real story of Snow White is the story of a middle-aged mother's jealousy of her adolescent daughter coming into puberty. You see what that is?
You can see that. Yeah, definitely.
That's the world of astrology. So you have to go into that arena before you can start talking about it, because there is no Snow White in those terms, in scientific terms.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
I do, yeah.
So you have a whole bunch of stories like that connected to your personality type.
Fascinating stuff, isn't it? Yeah. And people can sort of read a bit more about that on your website, can they?
Well, they can book a reading with me if they want. I mean, I do. That's my main source of income.
Is it?
I have incredibly. The people who do astrology, they don't even know I play music. It's really funny.
Amazing. Yeah, that's amazing.
Right?
You've had a huge amount of different stuff going on in your life over the last 58 years, haven't you? Amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm interested. I'm definitely. See, I know I'm going to be dead in 30 years, so that's why when people do certain things, and ultimately speaking, I have the choice on how to transform the world. I can have it occur for me however I want. This can either be a terrible time I'm having with you now, or not a terrible time, because there is no meaning to life. It's like we project the meaning onto it.
Yeah, and are you one of these people who makes a conscious effort to live in the present rather than
absolutely
the future, or the future?
Absolutely, I do.
Yeah,
constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's all that's real. You know, the past is only a thought. It's pointless getting hung up on the past, and the future doesn't exist. You know, so it's like this thing right now. You know, the key to life is to be satisfied now.
Yeah, it's a bit like you said a bit earlier on about the horse.
But what did I say about the horse, Bob? I don't know what I said.
You mentioned, I think it was a saying from, I can't remember who it was, but a saying about the horse just puts one step in front of the other.
I think it's. I think if you live in the now, like right now, you have no problems.
No.
Problems are created by delving into a past that doesn't exist. A problem is only a thought. So you go back into a past, it doesn't even exist. And then you go into a future that's not real.
Yeah.
They're just thoughts. And then where your life really is, like for me now, if I'd said the truth of my life now is I'm standing in my radio studio here talking to a guy on the phone from England, and you ain't giving me any problems.
This has been a fascinating conversation, Francis. Are there what other projects are you working on at the moment?
Well, we just got the blues project, and then I've got this farm that I'm going to go build. We're going to do a farm. I want to get children off their cell phones. I want to get them back to nature. I'm a bit of a hippie, so we're going to be, me and my girlfriend Lizzie, we're going to be we're going to buy a farm, and then we're going to start by getting people to come take responsibility and have duties. I noticed that young girls who worked on farms or had horses had no interest in that Kardashian lifestyle. There was something about the girls with the horses that always had responsibility. They never got bogged down in all that silly stuff about, plastic surgery and all the other stuff like that. And they had a sense of confidence about them that the other girls didn't. And so I think it's really important for the young kids coming up that they can have some sort of space they can go to. And farming is a great thing to work with animals, to work the farm, to, plant crops, to all that stuff. So we're going to get that whole thing going on. So
it'll be a sort of invitation to kids, will it, or purely on?
It will be. I'll do a government program, so we'll go into the government with it. Okay. We'll see how far we can expand it. But I think that's also it would be good to have artists and musicians come there. They can come work the farm, and we'll do. Just it's early days yet. We haven't. We've been looking at a few properties, but I don't think we're ready to go until. I get this album promoted up until February the 1st. Once February the 1st comes and I can let go of it, because I've made a commitment to myself to promote it until February the 1st, because I never promote my work.
No. Okay. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'll put all the stuff on the show notes for listeners. Thanks ever so much, Francis.
Well, thank you, mate. Thanks a lot. Great stuff.
You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share the show link to your friends and family, and if you have 60 seconds, I will be most grateful if you would please rate and review. To hear more episodes, please subscribe to the show and visit undercurrentstories.com. If you leave your email in the link, we will notify you as soon as new episodes are released. Also, check out our social media links, details of which can be found on the show notes. Until next time, this is Bob Wells wishing you all the very best.